The Sleep in Between by Mace, October 28th, 2003, 5:34 a.m. A cold, crisp morning, a hint of frost covering the lawn, the sun not yet in sight. She fidgets, searching for car keys tucked away in her cluttered coat pocket. They jingle as she rummages through but can't be found. "Come on," she mutters, emptying it onto the roof of the car. Finally, the keys. A large ring containing 2 keys, a mini flashlight, a whistle, and a Swiss Army knife slide from the car top. "Ah!" She bends down to pick them up when the sudden sense that she is not alone sweeps over her. Slowly she lowers her head, looking beneath the car, and the sight of a set of shoes catches her eyes. Someone is standing on the other side of the vehicle. She braces herself for action, holding her keys firmly, preparing to use them as a weapon. The ignition key placed between her middle and index finger. Poised for a confrontation, she quickly rises from her position only to find no one there. With a sigh of relief, she gets in and locks the door. While adjusting the mirror, she sees a figure standing in the shadows, watching her as she drives away. 5:40 a.m. Turning out from the cul-de-sac, she travels onto the main road. The traffic light ahead turns from green to yellow as her car approaches. Too far away to make it before the change, she slows. A black sedan pulls beside her. The driver is a thin Caucasian man with dark hair wearing a black pea coat. He pretends not to notice her staring at him. They sit quietly and tensely at the light. She turns, staring directly ahead now. Gripping the wheel so tightly she's white-knuckled. The night slips away, and the early stages of dawn begin to break through the blackness. The light cycles back to green, and a high-pitched squeal cuts the air, and smoke billows out from the tires as she peels away, leaving the sedan behind. 7:50 a.m. tap, 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 knocking on the driver's side window. Tap, tap, tap. "Hey, Fee, are you all right? Fee!" Phoenix appears to snap out of a trance, her hands still on the steering wheel. She turns her head to see Brenda, her co-worker, a tall, slim, over-caffeinated busybody. She motions for her to roll the window down. Phoenix sighs and slowly lowers it. "Hey, hun, are you okay?" Brenda asks. "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" Brenda furrows her brow and replies, "Because it's almost 8 o'clock. Phoenix, bewildered. "No, it's 6:15. She looks at her watch. It is indeed a few minutes to 8. "I don't understand," she mutters under her breath. She'd had trouble resting lately, but losing almost 2 hours was unsettling. What had happened? Had she fallen asleep, blacked out, or worse? Brenda interrupts the multitude of questions that rumble through Phoenix's mind. "Fee, are you coming in?" she asks. Phoenix starts the car and apologetically says, "I'm sorry, I'll work a double Saturday. I gotta go." Then pulls off, leaving Brenda clueless about what's just occurred. Her car roars away as if leaving the scene of a crime. With no immediate destination in mind, she drives aimlessly down the road. All her surroundings begin to fade and blur into tunnel vision. All but one, the constant sight of a man who appears to be walking out of step with time. She thinks he shouldn't be there and floors it to the next light. Again she glances at her rearview mirror, and he's mere steps away. "Hey, Siri! Call Dr. Bader," she says with urgency while rounding the corner. Another look back, and he's gone. She continues on until eventually pulling into a parking lot entrance. Walking briskly through the multi-level structure, she takes her phone from her coat and looks at the screen. A text reads, "Click this link to confirm your appointment." The strangely conspicuous, bald, hulky man follows a few steps behind. She doesn't notice as she enters through the hospital's emergency doors. He stands at the far end of the lobby, observing her as she steps onto the elevator. Phoenix enters the doctor's office to find a receptionist sitting quietly at her desk, reading a book. She cuts in. "I'm here to see Dr. Bader. Do you have an appointment?" The receptionist asks in a monotone. "I do," she replies. At that, a momentarily uncomfortable silence passes between them, followed by the rapid click-clacking of keys as she searches for Phoenix's medical file. "Are you sure?" she asks with a doubtful look. "Yes," Phoenix replies and shows her confirmation. "Well, have a seat." Phoenix looks around the all but empty room except for an elderly man sleeping in the corner. The evening news broadcast on a small television hanging on the wall. A news anchor reports her story asking, "A rash of home invasions, are they connected?" The doctor appears behind the receptionist and waves Phoenix into the back room with a smile. "So, Phoenix, it's been some time since I last saw you. What brings you in today?" he asks. After a brief hesitation, she replies, "I guess you could say I haven't been feeling well. I feel like I haven't slept in days, and I'm pretty sure I've started hallucinating." He gestures for her to get onto the table and proceeds to take her blood pressure. "Hallucinations? What are you seeing?" he asks while flashing his penlight in her eyes. "People... a man. Men, actually." "Men?" he asks with a squint. "Well, it's not the same man, I don't know. Someone. He always seems to be there." The doctor, now placing his hands on her neck, feeling under her ears. "Did you see these men today?" "One this morning and the other on the way here," she answers. He takes notice of something on her neck. "How'd you get this contusion?" "How'd I get what?" she asks. "You have a contusion, a bruise on your neck. Do you recall how it got there?" She pauses, taking a moment to recall what could have caused it. After finishing the physical exam, he stares at her, touching his pen to his lip, and with less than anticipated concern says, "Well, the good news is I didn't find anything patently wrong with you. It sounds like the sleeplessness you're experiencing is causing your hallucinations. It's probably also how you got that bruise. With rest, you should be fine. However, I would like to follow up in 2 weeks." "So, that's it?" she asks. "That's it? Unless there's something else I should know," he adds, making notations in her chart. She slides off the table, grabbing her coat from behind her. "No," she responds, but he notices concern on her face. "It's all right. Everything you've told me can be attributed to loss of sleep. A little melatonin goes a long way. Of course, if your symptoms increase, call me immediately." "Sure," she replies, though having fully expected to hear a terrible, or at the very least complicated diagnosis. The doctor pats her shoulder on the way out of the office, adding, "You get some rest." As she enters the atrium, her eyes automatically find the stranger just exiting the building. The day passes, leaving her no more accomplished than going from the house to the car to the house. Night falls, and she tucks into bed, but as expected, she lies there staring at the ceiling for what seems an eternity. Knowing there's no chance of falling asleep without a little aid, she flings the covers from the bed and heads downstairs into the kitchen. Tonight, she was going to find out if warm milk is just an old wives' tale. With the first sip, she knows she's heated it way beyond warm and that nothing will taste right for a week. As she sits, waiting for it to cool, she has the distinct impression she isn't alone. Her sudden uneasiness draws her to peek out the window through the blinds. A figure is standing in the shadows on the opposite side of the street. She can't be sure, but she thinks they're looking at her window, trying to see inside, trying to see her. She finishes her drink and goes back to bed. As she drifts off to sleep, she begins to have the dream again. The same thing, she's at a hotel or high-rise apartment. She sees people she doesn't recognize, and then the sound of rain rapping against the window rouses her from her slumber. She glances around the room to see her sneakers muddied and tossed in the corner. Seeing them makes her wonder about the many things she's experienced lately. However, not having time to dwell on the matter, she looks at the clock and hurries to the bathroom. With the toothbrush still in her mouth, she sniffs her armpits, applies a fresh coat of deodorant, and then dashes into the closet. Emerging a few minutes later, dressed in sweats and a navy hoodie accompanied by oversized dark sunglasses, she grabs her gym bag from the chair and bolts for the door. Recalling the previous morning, her eyes take inventory of her surroundings before getting into the car. As she drives down the street, the rain begins to taper, and a light breeze carries fallen leaves through the air. A group of students push onto the crosswalk as she approaches the stoplight. Among the crowd is her mystery man, the one from the morning prior. She's positive. He lays eyes on her as he passes. It frightens her. His penetrating stare makes her feel vulnerable. Is it simply fatigue causing her paranoia? Phoenix enters the gym, her head down, trying to avoid Brenda, who shouts, "Hey, Fee!" Walking faster, she pretends not to hear her. Making her way to her locker, she removes her glasses, stuffs her bag inside and shuts it, only to find Brenda standing there. Before she can say a word, the boss approaches. Michael, owner of Michael's Power Kick. An attractive, well-built throwback from the 1980s aerobic era. Anticipating a lecture, Phoenix raises her hand to halt his oncoming verbal discipline. "Before you say anything, let me explain." He interrupts, not giving her time to bombard him with a barrage of excuses. "Phoenix, please. You're a good employee, but you can't have your clients waiting for 20 minutes. I'm running a business, and it makes me look bad when customers have to wait, especially with Bally's just up the street. No more lateness, okay? We clear?" She takes a breath, feeling somewhat defeated, and replies, "We're clear." He gives a thumbs up and walks away. Moments later, Phoenix enters the exercise room to find her client sitting lotus position with her eyes closed. "You're late. I don't like late. I'm not paying you to be tardy. I pay you to teach me to fight, and I'd like to begin now," the woman remarks. Phoenix helps her to her feet and turns on the radio. The session begins, but distracted by the morning's events, Phoenix takes an unnecessary blow to the torso from her client. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I thought you saw it coming. Are you all right?" she says laughingly. Phoenix, doubled over, clutching her stomach, trying to catch her breath, looks up in disgust. "Forget about it. I should have been paying attention. I'm ready. Let's go." The woman, snickering, asks, "You aren't going to knock the hell out of me now, are you?" "Of course not," Phoenix replies, and then proceeds to repeatedly flip and throw her to the floor. Moments later, tired and battered, the woman gathers her belongings and slowly walks to the door. "I'll see you next week," Phoenix asserts enthusiastically. The woman turns her head slightly and continues out the door without a response. Brenda enters the room and looks at Phoenix in bewilderment, asking, "What happened to her? Little Miss High and Mighty looks like death warmed over." "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. We just had a rather intense session. She really got her money's worth today," she replies, leaning against the wall. "Well, I better get out of here. I have a class waiting. You know, the afternoon workout freaks." Hey, don't forget to let me know if you want to get together later. You always rush out of here. Is there a hot guy waiting for you that you're not telling me about? Brenda asks. She shakes her head denyingly and follows Brenda from the room. Phoenix stands in the nutrition hub, designed to pull in those who don't mind spending an exorbitant amount on semi-useless supplements while looking to maximize their fitness efforts. She takes a protein shake from behind the counter and stares out the window while drinking it, but takes no notice of the man staring at her from across the street. A woman enters the gym bundled up to the T. She waves and smiles at Phoenix as she removes her scarf and gloves. "Hi," she exclaims with a toothy grin. Phoenix gives her a pleasant hello and asks, "Are you ready to get started?" The woman, brimming with excitement, nods her head full of curls and follows her into the workout room. They stand facing one another to begin the warm-up. "Okay, let's relax. Close our eyes and take a few deep breaths. Inhale and exhale slowly," Phoenix instructs. "With the next breath, I want you to inhale and hold it." She demonstrates. Upon inhaling, a separation occurs. She's been pulled out of her body. Her eyes spring open to catch a glimpse of herself across the room, looking back at her as surprised as she is, then disappearing a second later. She gasps loudly, scaring her client, who is quite relaxed until that moment. "Oh my God, what's wrong?" she shrieks, clutching her imaginary pearls. "I have to go. I'm sorry," says Phoenix as she quickly gathers a few items from around the room. "What? Where?" the woman replies, thoroughly confused. Without another word, she rushes from the room, passing Brenda in the hallway. "Fee!" Phoenix throws her hand up as she passes by and leaves the gym. Outside, she eyes her car parked just at the front of the lot. She jogs over and hops in. Taking a moment to compose herself, she holds onto the steering wheel, murmuring, "It's your imagination. That's all. Just your imagination." She takes a deep breath and then turns the ignition. Sputter, 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 it doesn't turn over. She tries again. Come on, another sputter and then nothing. She sighs, exits the car, and lifts the hood. Her eyes search for any obvious problems but find none. Vexed, she closes the hood, looks around, and heads down the street to the pharmacy just a beat away. In mind is her hope for a decent night's rest. Once inside, she peruses the store looking for the correct sleep aid. As she searches, she thinks she sees the stranger a couple of aisles over. The man looks at her the moment she notices him. She freezes, standing there, paralyzed by fear, until a voice announces a price check over the loudspeaker, snapping her out of it. The man nods at her and goes on about his business. Calm down, crazy. It's not him, she thinks, putting her hand to her forehead and rubbing it gently. She grabs the bottle of dose right from the shelf, checks out, and then leaves the store. She looks up and down the block when she exits, taking in her surroundings and the night air. Walking away, she notices how curiously quiet it is. Usually shoppers are bustling about in anticipation of the holiday. However, she does enjoy the silence. As she approaches her street, the stranger steps out of the shadows and draws close to her left side. He takes her by the arm, and before she can scream, a feeling of faintness falls over her. She wants to cry for help, but can't. Not only is she too lightheaded, but when she looks into his eyes, something within tells her not to. Holding her arm tightly, he says, "We have to go." He hurries her along briskly while looking behind as they move through the streets. She loses her balance from the dizzy spell that's come over her. He helps her to her feet and keeps moving. "Who are you?" she asks. He doesn't answer. I I can't make it, she says sickly. He looks at her, replying, if we stop, we die. He knows she doesn't understand what's happening, but he has no choice but to keep going. Their brisk pace soon breaks into a full-out run. It's hard for her to keep up with him, even though he's holding her by the hand. She's blind to where they're going. All the streets look the same. It's dark. She's afraid and very ill. It seems as if they've been running for hours. They stop momentarily and duck into a doorway. She takes a moment to catch her breath. Why are you doing this? She asks. We have to go. They're right behind us. He responds, Who is? She asks. Then hears angry voices in the distance. She can just make out someone saying, Find them! Come on, he says, and quietly maneuvers them through the streets until they reach a place where they can rest. On the way in, she catches a glimpse of a sign hanging from the building facade. He's taken them to the old abandoned Quaker building. While inside, she struggles against the urge to pass out. You'll be all right soon, but we can't stay here, he tells her. What did you do to me? She asks. Before he can answer, pieces of brick begin to chip away and fall to the floor. Window glass shatters around them, and the walls are pelted with bullets. It's them! Get down! He pushes her to the floor. Stay down! They've begun to shoot at the building in hopes of flushing them out. Their bullets miss them by inches. I'll get you out of here, he says, carefully looking around for a quick escape. They hear them enter the building and they're getting closer. Come on, he says. They use a window at the far side of the room, climb down the fire escape and get away. They run until they reach a defunct train yard. When they get there, he takes her to one of the freight cars, dips beneath it, and disappears. She looks underneath to see where he's gone. And a moment later, a hand reaches out from inside and helps her through a trapdoor. Once inside, she's overwhelmed by a rush of emotions and fractured memories, then collapses unconscious. Coming to, accompanied by an alarming scream, and scurry backward into the corner. She looks around the room to see 4 people staring at her. One by one, she stares at them, 3 men and 1 woman. The man who brought her there begins to wipe her face with a cool, damp cloth. The others appear perplexed. Is she going to be all right? The woman asks sternly. He pauses, wiping her face. Yeah, we just need to give her a little time. She'll be fine, he says, then continues to dab her forehead with his cloth. She doesn't speak, but gathers that her protector's name is Luke. As she looks at them, a vaguely familiar sense comes over her. I think she's coming around, one of the men exclaims. Why grey, because she looked at you? Asks the tall, thin, blonde-haired female. No, because of how she looked at me, he replies comically. She notes that his name is Grey, and he speaks with an Irish accent. It doesn't help her. She still doesn't remember them. She raises her hand to end his gentle head dabbing and manages to eke out a question. What did you do to me? With a mystified expression, a dark-haired male moves closer to her and waves his hand in front of her face. He snaps his fingers at her, adding, Wow, you are out of it. She smacks his hand from her face and asks, Quit it! And who are you? Luke? The woman exclaims, clearly frustrated by Phoenix's behaviour. I don't know, TK. Give her a minute. He helps her up from the floor. She observes them, noticing they all have firearms. It's okay, Luke says, removing his weapon and placing it on a table nearby. He strokes her hair, saying, You'll be fine in a minute. She backs away. You keep saying that. I'm supposed to know who you are. I'm sorry, but you have the wrong person for whatever you have going on here. I'm not who you want. I won't tell the police or anybody. I just need to get home, okay? Anybody know what happened to her? Anybody, Luke? Asks an irked TK. I don't know. Will you stop asking me that? He exclaims. There's nothing wrong with me. I do need to go home, however. Phoenix interjects as she backs away. Luke grabs her by the arms and looks her in the eyes. Who am I? He asks. She's bombarded by a rush of images and emotions. I don't know, she replies. You do know, he continues. She's flustered and finds it hard to breathe. The others stand in the distance, watching, wondering if this will be the moment she recalls who they are. Yes, you do, remember, he says as he holds on to her. Why did you run with me? He asks again. I was scared, she replies. That's not the reason. I know you. You trusted me. Why? I don't know. I was sick. I was scared. He takes her hand and places it over his heart. She can feel his heart beating rapidly. He leans forward and kisses her gently. She doesn't know what to do, only stand there stunned by what's happened. She wants to remember, but feels only a vague connection between them. Her mind is blank. She doesn't trust what's happening to her. This is getting us nowhere, Luke, a voice says from behind. He releases her arms and takes a step back. Having no idea if she should believe the 4 people surrounding her, she looks at him and faintly whispers, I'm sorry. Me too, he says, turning and walking away. Being rescued from certain harm mere moments before, her most basic instincts tells her that she should. The silence is broken by the slender blonde woman as she says, God knows whatever reason you can't seem to remember anything. But I'm TK, this is Grey, and he's Hess. As for the guy whose heart you just crushed under your sneaker, he's your boyfriend. If I were you, I'd get to remembering him real quick, honey. Come on, TK, lay off, says Grey. She'll remember us in no time, won't you, Fee? You could never forget me, could you, love? She rubs her arm. What did you do to me? She asks with a frown. I gave you a cocktail, replies Hess. A little something to wake you up, and a little something to stop the room from spinning. It worked, right? Yeah, she says hesitantly as she continues to rub her arm. Hurts, doesn't it? Grey asks with a laugh. She looks at him and then says, Okay, let's say I believe you all. Will someone please explain what's going on? Oh, this is going to be good. I promise this will blow your mind, Hess says, going on to demonstrate her head exploding. Let me tell her, Grey says excitedly. They sit forward in their chairs and tell her she'd better have a seat. She pulls up a stool and sits down. What I'm about to tell you is going to be unbelievable, but you have to believe it because it's 100% true, okay? I can't promise that, she says. After a pause, he exclaims, You're a Remmie. We all are, he says. Okay. What's a Remmie? She asks. Well, rapid eye movement known as REM signifies deep sleep. When in REM state, you're dreaming in our case. There's more to it than that. Our dreams aren't just impressions of past encounters or fantasies. We dream differently than normal people, or Joes as we call them. Our dreams are extremely detailed and tend to repeat themselves every night. She looks intrigued as certain occurrences ring true. For some, a little more is added to the dream as the nights progress. It happens all at once for others. But it's always the same thing, night after night, until the cycle is complete. Those dreams are reminders of what you have to do, or sometimes what you have done on a previous walk. That means for 27 nights it's the same thing over and over. But on the 28th night you walk until the cycle begins again on the 1st. You know you've walked when you wake up and can't remember dreaming about anything. Walking is not sleepwalking. You don't get out of bed physically and prowl the streets. You're still in bed, but your consciousness takes shape, and you can be in two places simultaneously. You can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Live two entirely different lives if you want. There are some differences, though, when you're walking. Little changes that have made big changes in the world as we know it. For instance, Remmies don't leave fingerprints. We don't sweat. We don't bleed. We can't leave DNA behind on a walk. Every day, and as long as we're awake, we're like every other Joe, except for the ESP. Luke enters the room after being gone for some time. She watches him and feels a bit of regretful for not being able to remember him. Gray continues as Hess straddles his chair listening intently. Now all Remmies have ESP, that's extrasensory perception. Don't look at me like that, you have it, and eventually, when you remember everything, you'll feel pretty stupid for having endured listening to this. There are two kinds of Remmies, Remmies and Omni. Unis have telepathy. Omnis have telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition. Those are just 3 types of ESP, but that's all any Remmie has displayed so far. Omnis can sense Unis, but not vice versa. The detection of another Remmie manifests itself in the form of vertigo. It's more severe with another Omni. That's why you passed out when you got here. He points to Hess, who, with a smile, raises his hand and confirms his Omni status. Not all Remmies are at the same level with their abilities, but you and everyone in the room are all pretty sharp. Gray continues. Okay, say I believe you. Why can't I remember any of it? Who's the man that's been following me? She asks. It's Luke. God, you're so clueless. TK shouts from across the room, thoroughly aggravated. Not him! The other guy! Phoenix retorts. The room goes silent. What other guy? Luke asks, terribly concerned. What guy, Fee? Asks Gray. All of them stumped by her allegation. She's wasting our time, TK remarks sharply. What is your problem with me, lady? Asks Phoenix. My problem is that while we're all here with you re-educating Rita, demented people are running around the streets trying to obliterate anyone who gets in their way. Keep it together, TK, says Gray. To be fair, there have always been demented people running around. He pauses and then adds, My mailman's quite demented. It's not funny, Gray, she says, swiping her hand through her hair in annoyance. Again, in the same droll tone as before, he says, I'm not laughing, TK. Following his last comment, it's hard for the others to keep a straight face. She storms out of the room. They can't help but snicker about it when she leaves. All right, Hess says as he raises his hands, motioning that they should get back to business. Okay, listen. This is important, says Gray. The who that you want to know about is the NWRF, short for the New World Rulers faction. The NWRF's aim is to eliminate all of their non-compliant Remmie counterparts. Since we can't detect one another, they don't know who we are without the help of an Omni or unless we screw up and identify ourselves. We've been relatively safe. However, they must have identified some of us in their quest to rid the world of any other Omnis. The NWRF alters the due process of law and order for personal gain. I'm talking murder, destruction, espionage, whatever it takes to get what they want whenever they want. This war reaches way back. It's not new, and it's not just the NWRF. Nearly every big disaster you've ever read about has been Remmie-related. The explosion of the Hindenburg, the Challenger disaster, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, JFK, the sniper shootings, all work of the NWRF, their victims, Omnis. They have to be stopped. That's where we come in. That's our cause. When we found each other, we all agreed to take action when we discovered what was really happening around us. The home invasions, That's how they usually come for us. It's a classic NWRF move. They extract whatever information they can get and then kill you. You two are the biggest threat right now because you can identify them, he says, gesturing toward Phoenix and Hess. Continuing. That's why Luke has been watching you so closely this past month. Luke watches her from across the room. Her eyes meet his. She senses there's a bond, but has no actual recollection of it.